Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the last video of Skye on our lovely trip up there. The weather was a little bit dicey, and to put it the mildest really, and it wasn't the perfect sort of conditions really, so we were a little bit unlucky there, but that's part of being a painter really, a landscape painter. You don't know what's going to confront you, so you just have to get on with it. What I'm going to do today is the first drawing that I did on Skye. We just got off the ferry and we found that first spot with the big view looking over to the little boats on the bottom right hand corner and looking out over towards the mainland and the mountains there, but you couldn't really see the mountains because they were so covered in cloud. It's a difficult picture. It didn't have much colour. The weather, as I said, was a little bit grey, so it sort of muted the picture quite a lot. But I think it's a really good opportunity to try something new on that, and that's a limited palette. And limited palette is a fascinating thing. It's almost like a black and white photograph with a little bit of colour in there. It's a subtle affair, so it's an interesting technique, and I think it's particularly well suited for dull conditions. So the palette that I'm going to use for this painting is my old one, my old Holbein palette, and it is still quite a nice palette really. It has many good features about it, mainly because it's metal and it's enamelled, which is always a lovely thing to paint on. Mine is particularly beaten up. It's had many years of use, but it's still good. The colours that I'm using on here are going to be limited, as I said. The first one's going to be burnt umber, then ultramarine blue, and then raw sienna. So those are the three basic primary colours. So you've got the red in burnt umber, the blue in ultramarine blue, and raw sienna is the yellow in it. So, but they're very soft colours, very soft colours. I probably introduced a little bit of white paint at the end yet. I don't really know yet. So that'll be an interesting challenge, which we'll find out on. Right, so here we are starting the painting. I've done the drawing on the picture. And it was noticed last time in some of the comments that I put these little marks on the board here, and these are thirds. It just helps me sort of semi-grid the paper up, and it's one of the benefits of being in the studio that you can do that. But you don't have that benefit working in the field. So these are my colours that I've pushed out of the tubes, and it's raw sienna, ultramarine blue, and burnt umber, and that's it. So we're going to try and create a painting from just that. And what an interesting challenge that is, trying to get the variation of colour when there is almost no variation of colour. So really it's a value variation. So we're going to start at the top of the picture again and work downwards and then work from background over and then foreground over the background. That's the normal way of approaching a painting. So I'm going to have a little bit of blue in the sky. So it's very much experimental, this. I have no idea how it's going to turn out, but we'll give it a good go. I have done it a few times, but it's a very effective form of painting. So you see how the yellow there turned this green? So that's my green for some of the foliage in the painting. Right. The warm colour. And now we are going to apply some to the sky. Okay. And then ultramarine blue. Maybe a slightly blue a bit here for the sky. Okay. So trying to not overmix the colours still. Now we're going to apply a sort of bluing effect. I quite like the bluing effect in the distance of painting. So you see that's a bit of a blue going into the distance. Those are the far distant mountains. And I'm hoping that it's going to give the feel that there are clouds covering the mountains a bit. So something like that. So maybe a bit of variation in the background here. Okay, just trying to get that first layer down. Coming down into the water now. So I'm going to paint the water a little bit bluer. So here's the distant water in the background. There. So that's the sea. Yeah, that's a nice effect. Now I'm going to tackle a little bit more of the sea. This is the inland sea now. So you've got the islands to the left and to the right. So now I'm going to come down with my ultramarine blue, maybe a little bit of raw sienna, and that's going to green it off slightly. So it's a slightly greener sea. I think painting in a limited palette's a fascinating experiment, really, and well worth tackling. I don't do it enough. I think it's a really interesting concept that you can get a painting done with almost nothing, almost no colours, like that. I'm trying to get some reflections in the water by leaving the white paper. You can see how fast it's going too. Now I'm going to change it to a bluer colour as we get a little bit closer to the shore. I'm trying to keep some reflections. There we go. There's a nice blue there as we've come closer to shore. I like to change the colours of things a bit around. One of the interesting things I tell my students is we're not painting walls. It's not a white emulsion. There we go, and that's the sea done. There. So there we have the sky, the mountains with the clouds coming over the top and the sea coming in. And it's quite effective, I think. Quite effective indeed. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is paint the far distant hills. Not the mountains in the real far distance, but these hills here. And again, they're going to be a bluey greeny effect maybe. And so it is aerial perspective, it's called, and it's a really interesting thing where the further things away go into the distance, the more blue they are. You see that? But it's a greeny tone blue. Okay, like that. Now for the next islands, or a bit of the mainland really, and that I'm going to paint yellower. So just to give it the separation really, so that this is a different bit of land from the one behind. See, that's warmer and cooler. I can add some burnt umber to it as well. In the front. A white house there, interesting white house. That made the picture, I thought. Okay. Yeah, so you can see there's two planes there. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, and of the islands here. So mixing the ultramarine blue and the raw sienna to give that sense of distance. And then the hills coming in here. Then you have some islands tipping away here. Little islands. So I'm just using my one brush at the moment, my little mop, my Winsor and Newton mop, which I've grown very fond of. I think it's a really nice brush. Quite like the shape of it, everything about it. Okay, so that's that island in the distance. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce some different shades in this hill now. So trying to maybe a little bit of purer blue, just to try and give it feels like there's a little bit of texture going on. And different coloured fields, so some of them are sort of just bracken, dark, and some of them are more tree-like. So that's that. Yeah, that sort of works. Okay. And now we're going to go into the nearer hills and darken it up a bit, so the coast. So there's a sort of dark patch at the bottom where the tree cover's in there. So I give that an interesting. So I'm trying to imagine trees there. They can put some houses in there later. That's why I've got the white paint ready to use. Although I haven't squeezed it out. I never squeeze the white paint out at the beginning because it just tends to go dry. Okay. And I work on the other side now just to get that similar sort of effect of the trees. Coming in. And darkening underneath there. I'm going to work on the sea now, just to try and get that variation in there. So just more of a pure blue. Trying to just give it the sense that there are some reflections of light in the water. Soften it down. Give it some more colour. So I'm trying to give it the sense of reflections, as I said. That's the tricky part. Okay. Something here. You've got to sort of have a battle plan on this. We're going to change brush now because we've got these little islands that we need to start putting in. So as things get closer to you, they also get darker. So aerial perspective said what's furthest away is lighter and bluer. So now we've got to get something which is closer. More browns as well. So those little islands here. It was a bit too soon to put that down. So just try and correct that. And there as well. Right, and then we got the next island down. Hopefully it's not going to, maybe a bit too wet to try that. So we'll move somewhere else. On this side. To give the sense of the beach coming in. Maybe a bit of blue. Try and get some sense of trees. Right. Now a sort of bluer mark, a bit more interesting where the shore is really quite shallow. Right, so still working on broader shapes at the moment, broader sizes. Now the nearest island, which is going to be even darker. So roughly about there. Now we're going to head to the foreshore now. So these rocks coming in here. And much darker. So you can see the different colours coming out, the blues and the browns. That's important. the foreshore. Go back to my mop again now. So this is going to be for the sort of greener areas. So raw sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue. So try to make it greener looking. It's quite light too. So you see how green that is, just with those two colours. We're going to brown it off here, because it's more winter colours. The Scottish scenery is a very brown colour scheme in the winter. Then some trees in the front, or some bushes in the front. Little pathways that the sheep, I think, have trod in. So working over to the left of the painting, there's some gorse. So that's a sort of yellowy, greeny colour, and so it's over here. Unfortunately, the tripod's in the way, so I can't really show it to you. So those are the colours I'm going to mix for it, and the gorse is here on the left. So that's the first wash, really. So now back to the sort of different band of hedging that's over here at the front. So lots of hedges. Separated so the sheep can't go in, I guess. Okay. And then at some point I'm going to have to work on the boats. So it's very dark around those boats. Jets into the water. All the little details of the terrain, little plants and bushes, I'm trying to pick out. I think one of the great abilities with painting and drawing is it's really looking. If you can look properly, then you could paint. And I think it's noticing things as well. I think one of the differences between a good artist and a better artist is that the better artist notices more things. They're aware of more things. I think I can go back into the gorse. So a bit of ultramarine blue and raw sienna. Probably all of the colours, in fact, just to darken it off as much as I can. Trying to get some trees, so using the side of the brush to try and get a bit of something that looks like a bit like foliage, trees. Now back to maybe the distance. The next part to paint is the boats, and the boats are really the key feature of this painting. Those are the things which we recognise and will give solidity to it and some sort of central theme. So I've got my small brush out now, and we're going to try that. So we'll start with the middle one. So do the side of the boat first. Then the darker at the bottom. So they're white boats largely. White's an interesting thing too. Nothing's really white. If you look carefully enough, you'll realise that these things aren't white. They're more of a grey. So just subtle colours. The deck. So I might add a little bit of white to them at the end. Darkness here. Side of the boat. So really hinting at it. I don't want to put too much detail into here because that would make it out of context with the rest of the painting. This is a loose painting, and if you want to keep it loose, you want to keep it the same style all the way through. And there's not much point in having everything loose and then a few highly detailed things. That wouldn't make any sense to me. So, bluer. So the windows, portholes. Really, I really am trying to paint them as simply as I can. So I'm painting them as minimally as I can, just to get the sense of what they are, and no more than that. I don't want to paint every detail in this. Then we have the boat at the back, which is blue. Give it a wash at the top. So pure ultramarine blue to give it the colour. That's the main colour. Now on the side, going to really darken it down. So ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt umber, and that will give this dark edge here. So I'm going to contrast it with the boat below. So now they've got a dark edge on the boat below. It will suddenly come forward. That boat. Like that. And it's dark inside the boat. So always trying to do it as minimally as possible. There. Thought that was quite effective. And a darker bit here. Yeah, that feels like a boat to me. With almost nothing there. And I love that part of Impressionist painting. You've almost painted nothing, but it has the reality of what it is. It's a lot of fun, that part of it. A few dark bits. And the sail. Blue sail here. Some windows of the other boat. There. And yeah, that's almost it. What I might do is give it a little mast, but I might go over this in a bit of white paint later as well. So the mast is coming. It's actually a sort of metal mast. So if I give it blue to begin with, work it out, down it goes. Hope that looks like a boat to you. Maybe dark here to give this sense of the end of the boat. Yeah, 3 boats. Done as simply as I could, really. So just basic planes of colour. Now I'm going to deal with the base of the picture. So it is quite a green colour, but I don't really have that type of green. So it's a mixture of ultramarine blue and raw sienna. So the blue and the yellow make green. So I'm going to put that at the base. So it's a sort of yellow. Sorry, green. There. So that's that. So I'm going to capture 1 or 2 of the little islands over here, just tiny marks. Lots of tiny islands. And trying to get some more of the trees and foliage in too. More trees here. Maybe darken off the front of the sea. That was a mistake there on the left, but I quite like it now. So I think one of the things, you do make mistakes in watercolour, but it's a question of working out whether that's a good mistake or a bad mistake. And I feel that's quite a nice mistake. I like that. Don't know whether you do, but I thought it sort of added something to the water. And it's all in the interpretation, really. One of the interesting parts about painting is that you may like a mark, but somebody else won't. But that's what painting is all about. The reflection in the water of the land. Here as well. Here. We have an interesting problem here with the house. So this is the house in the distance, and there it is there. But we've got this white bit here, which I'm a bit sort of disappointed with, really, because if to make something white, what's next to it must be darker. So I need to darken this bit here off. So I've got to find a way of doing it. So maybe a little bit of, let's pretend there's a bit of land there or something. So I need to have it like a beacon, this white house. Otherwise it stops looking like a house. So, yeah. Do you see my point? So now that white is really coming forward of the house. A lot of inventive stuff going on with painting. And it's also being a question of being slightly free from reality as well. You don't want to be too trapped in reality. I'm not a topographer. The sort of seaweed at the front here, that might be a good thing to pop in. Lots of little dots. The tide's going out, so it's exposing all this. So it's quite dry brush, really. Little dots. So just trying to give this little far background a little bit of a something. I haven't quite worked what it is yet, but just trying to make it seem a little bit more real, like there's some fields in there or something. Yeah, I like that mark. Trying to give it the sense that there's trees and things without depicting trees in the true impressionist way. Right, so now we're going to get there are trees at the front. So darken this section up here. So it really is a black and white study, this. Almost like a photograph, black and white photograph. Photography is a fascinating subject in itself. I love photography. My other interest is film photography. I love street photography in particular. Using really old cameras. So going into this bottom corner now, and I feel that's a bit plain. There's a lot of detail in it, but I need to, there's sort of pathways and trees coming in. Lots going on. And we've got sort of more hedgerow there, I guess. So there's not much mixing in this, not any spectacular mixing anyway. Just the three colours. But what we're always trying to do is get that sense of three dimensions. Let's go into the gorse again, darken it down even more. At the base of it around here. In the foreground there are some sort of streaks of sort of lines really, and they are the lines that the sheep have taken, sort of gouging a pathway through. So I'm going to put some of those in. Sheep trails. And they make a really interesting sort of bit of variation. So see, I'm really finishing off now, just adding little touches everywhere. So maybe a little touch around here. You can see in my palette that I haven't over-mixed, and I find that a really important consideration. So you can still see the blues and the yellows in here. When you look at someone's palette, you can really, for me, I can tell what sort of painter they are. And because the palette is a representation of the painting, really. And that's my palette, and in part progress. Right, so what I'm going to do now is to provide a few of the little details. So there's a tree here coming up, and I think that's quite interesting. I love painting things over things. So background, foreground. So then they link in composition. So there's a little tree come out there. Yeah, that's all right. And also there's lots of posts around, and the posts are to stop the sheep, so there's fences. So do quite a few posts. Not too accurately. I'm sure it doesn't look quite like that. Okay, that's added to it. These little touches at the end are so enjoyable. I've squeezed some white paint out now, and as I say, it's always the last thing that I do because it just dries so fast. So I'm going to do a little bit of blue in the sea, just again to give it that little bit of variation. Link it together a bit. Correct a few things. Right, so getting onto the final touches now, and the little white house I'm going to paint here. It's actually got a brownish conical roof to it. So only when I zoomed in on the computer that I first noticed that. I could not see it with my eyes on the spot. Little house there. Maybe add a few touches to it later on. Okay, and we've also got some houses on the right as well. So get the white paint. Don't want to make it too white because it was a dull day. So trying to work out what sort of white it is. So we've got definitely whiter than that. Not going to complicate it too much. And a little grey roof. In the distance, Just hinting at it. I don't want to put too much detail on it because that will be out of context. And then back to the centre house for a couple of touches of white paint. There. Okay, and now the boats, the last bit of white paint. So a little bit on the mast to bring that out. So because it's dark behind, I want to paint that bit lighter so you can see it, otherwise it just fades away. The roof, a few touches, maybe at the front. It's almost like a corrective process, white paint. So what I'm going to do now to the painting is to add a few little boats. They weren't there, but I think this part here is quite plain, so I'll introduce just a few marks more than anything else. Nothing complicated. So one there, one there. Yeah, maybe one in the distance. And these are going to be the hint of a boat. If we go here and here. So the next step with that is a little bit of white paint, really, just to give it the sense that there's something there. Remember, not overdoing it. That's fine. The very last thing to do now is to sign it, and I think I'm just going to do it in the bottom right-hand corner. Right, so James Potter. There we go. There we go. Here we have the painting, and it's a really interesting experiment. Limited palette, just 3 colours there to produce the painting with mostly the colours in there that were there. And I think it's worth having a go at yourself to see what you can do with 3 colours, and it makes you think differently. It simplifies the whole process and gets a lot of the clutter out your mind about what colour to use. There's only 3 of them, so you haven't really got too much choice on that. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can give it a go too as well. Tanya seems to like the painting, which is nice. She's sort of interested in how you can get a painting from almost nothing, really. And it's very suited to sort of dull conditions. The dull conditions a limited palette can save you. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. In the next video, we'll be back to Skye on our last video there. So hope you enjoy that. See you soon. Bye-bye.